Well, we're live. Look at that. Saved by the bell on Tuesday, April 7th. We need to get back into the weeds with our ledge council. I apologize for that break. Here we are. Section. Where are we at? Section 10? Section 9?
10. I mean, we were talking about section 9, but I think we finished.
Yep, we move on. Anybody have, we have that section 9 we already updated on. We're in section 10.
Right, pulling the screen back up here. So the next two sections relate to duplicate certificates of title. The first section, section 10, is a duplicate motor vehicle title. So this is if your title has been lost or destroyed. You can ask for a duplicate title from the department. Under current law, even if you go into a DMV location and they can produce the title on the spot, they have to mail it to you. So this allows them to hand you the title at the DMV location if they can produce it there. Section 11 is, I'd forgotten about this. This is a technical correction for the title section, title chapter for vessels, snowmobiles, and all-terrain vehicles. When the chapter was updated to include snowmobiles and all-terrain vehicles, they forgot to add in the word snowmobile or all-terrain vehicle behind title or certificate of title. The rest of the chapter is referencing all three vehicles. So I corrected the issue in this section. And then section 12 allows them to hand you your duplicate title for your vessel, snowmobile, or all-terrain vehicle at a DMV location if they can produce it on the spot.
So 10, 11, and 12 all go together?
Yep.
Are there questions on 10, 11, and 12? This was an existing practice, I think we heard that they wanted to codify.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just correcting or clarifying the law to make sure that that's clear, that they were not legally required to mail your title to you.
Anybody have any concerns, any issues about coming back to this at any point?
Things make sense.
Okey-doke.
Section 13 clarifies where you file your title appeal. So if you have an appeal under the title chapter, currently provides that you may appeal to the Superior Court for Washington County, but it doesn't specify the civil division as opposed to the criminal division. So this is just a technical amendment to specify the civil division. And that was requested by counsel for DMV to just clarify that.
Person agreed by that. Civil division of Washington. Anywhere I'm in the state, that's the only place I can go.
So yes, for this particular appeal, that's how it's structured. I'm not sure what the policy reason was back in the day for limiting it to Washington County. I know many of the so with the appeals sections, there are generally sort of two standard administrative appeal options for Superior Court. Well, three. One is it'll say to the civil division in Washington County, because that's where most of state government is based. The second is it'll say either the civil division or the division for the county in which the individual lives. And then the third is to any Superior Court. Or just to Superior Court generally. So this change here was just to clarify without changing the law. But if there are concerns that this is too narrow, that's something the committee could explore.
It's just clarification what was already there. I just, I don't know. A person aggrieved. What a great word. Aggrieved by an act or omission. Okay. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I guess it's a technical change, but we're changing it. if we're looking for testimony, should we have somebody in this saying, hey, why is it this way? And I mean, are we to the point where other courts will be willing to take on this appeal? I mean, I don't know enough about it. Like, it's something like, oh yeah, we do this all over. And it doesn't need to be just Washington. I mean, I have no clue. But if we're gonna go there, I don't know, that might be like a question on the floor.
Mhm.
Well, why is it,
Well, I've got to go to judiciary and a couple of other things. Maybe I should start there.
it's good. But I'm just saying if we're looking.
Yep, no, I'm just trying to make sure we've done our due diligence, and I appreciate the support on that. You know, you don't know.
I
Yeah,
think it's a valid question, like why people would have to travel to Montpelier. Or like, do they allow Zoom? Do they?
Usually the ones always get you on the floor. Oh, it's just. What, huh?
there's lawyers out there. And there's opposing lawyers. Okay, I will take that under advisement and see whether we get anywhere with that. Okay?
Okay, section 14. So this is under the abandoned motor vehicles title. And this is exempting, or abandoned motor vehicles chapter, but this is exempting certain vehicles from the need to obtain a certificate of title. And there is a list here. The intent in this was also to be a technical change by breaking the list into 3 different items. I do remember a comment the last time we walked through this that there may have been a concern raised that this wasn't entirely technical. But all that we did when we were drafting this was try to split it into the 3 items so it wasn't a long run-on sentence. But I don't know if there's, I seem to remember that comment being raised that someone had concerns about this, heard concerns, so. Anyone? Maybe I'm mixing this up with a
Yeah, I
different
don't know, I don't
section.
remember that comment.
Yeah,
Representative.
Why, what's the reason not to have a title?
so they're exempted from requiring a certificate of title here. Let me pull up the full section to get you that answer.
Yeah, the first line says a manufacturer dealer held for sale. We can't sell it without a title.
Mayor, real quick, just for clarification, I can speak for A. As soon as you title that, it can become used. I think it's probably for the purpose of value.
Okay, yeah, so this is, yeah, because you title it when you sell it.
When you sell it.
So how we have the original certificate of origin.
It has to get titled till you sell it. It's gonna sit on the lot for a while. Is
Okay.
Mm,
Okay.
yeah.
that what you mean?
And what you're saying is,
So
what we're saying is that we're moving it on the road to go from one lot to another type of thing.
Exactly, so this
For
is,
purpose of testing or demonstration.
right,
It's incidental, okay. I didn't realize that. Same thing applies, my same question for B, I mean, educational institution. Anyway, seems like you need a title.
Imagine if there was a car dealer in the house. You got a community of the house. Yeah. Sorry.
so this, just to give you a sense of the other exemptions under here, they include vehicles owned by the US government that aren't registered in the state, vehicles owned by non-residents that are not required by law to be registered in the state, vehicles regularly engaged in interstate transportation of persons or property, for which a currently effective certificate of title has been issued in another state, certain self-propelled small personal vehicles, motorcycles with engines smaller than 300 cubic centimeters, trailers with an unlading weight under 1,500 pounds, certain types of mopeds, vehicles for off-highway use that are deemed exempt by the commissioner. And vehicles more than 15 years old on January 1, 2024 that has been registered in Vermont and has not had a change in ownership since January 1, 2024.
So this is, so where did you get that? That was,
That's the remainder of the section that's hidden by the ellipses,
I
just
see.
giving you context.
No, that's good.
So there is a list of vehicles that aren't required. I don't know what the background is on the educational institution for driver training purposes, so that's a driver's ed school, or the vehicle used by a manufacturer solely for testing. That, I think we can all understand that. That's, they're road testing a new vehicle in Vermont. Something like that.
One more thing. So it says 300 cc's.
It does say less than 300 cc's or with an electric motor of less than 20
I mean,
kilowatts.
that would be every Vespa.
A lot.
Yeah.
125 cc.
Yeah, and so it's just a certificate of title. It also includes motor-driven cycles, which are also covers things like Vespas and mopeds.
So you wouldn't have to have a title when I bought a 280 Honda back in, really?
Right. So, Bill said,
Okay.
Right.
De minimis.
All right. So
I guess the question becomes, are we digging into this anymore or we're good? Somebody more than I, okay. Next.
section 15, these are the reimbursement for towing from public property. So A1 allows a towing service to charge a fee of up to $250 for towing an abandoned motor vehicle from public property. The fee would be paid to the towing service by the Department of Motor Vehicles or to the Agency of Transportation if the agency had the vehicle towed and submits proof to the department that it has paid the towing service for the cost of towing the vehicle from the right of way. And so this relates just to abandoned motor vehicles. This does not relate to accident scenes, et cetera. Their big changes here are allowing the Agency of Transportation to get reimbursement and doubling that towing fee from $125 to $250. We last raised that fee, I think, 4 years ago. So just a background on the section, questions or discussion. I don't know if you've heard from the department and agency on this yet.
We did.
Okay.
Last, on the second. We did. I do sometimes wonder, got one agency and department, the department's under the agency. Department collects $300 million a year on behalf of the agency. And the agency's got a $943 million budget. We're gonna swap $250 tow fees back and forth between the two. Sounds like it would cost more to track that down than what it would be worth, but it seems important for it to be in here. And it's all underlined as new, but whatever it's worth. I don't have any other comment than that at this point.
Okay.
We heard from towers, we heard from the DMV. Does anybody have any other piece? We had emergency services, we had the director of emergency for the agency, and we had the secretary of the agency all show up for this section. We got the, front row treatment. Other questions? Anybody else gonna save me from my comments?
Good job. Okay, diesel fuel tax here. This is more technical changes. We're adding subsections and subparagraphs to the section. The request came from council to the DMV to try to make the section more readable by breaking breaking up things that were different ideas into different subsections. It doesn't actually change the language of the section, except to add the omitted word by, owned by, or under the control of the person. And to replace the old cross-reference to subdivision 4 with a reference to subsection C, the new numbering. Other than that, the language in the section is unchanged except for renumbering.
What was the need for that?
Counsel for the DMV raised the concern that the way it was set up, you had, and this is actually somewhat common in our older statutes, subdivisions were just added over time, even though logically they didn't always align in terms of the subject matter that they were addressing. So to make it a little bit easier to read, council proposed breaking it out into subsection A covering one topic, B covering another topic, C covering the third topic within the section, just to sort of be able to cross-reference, because before I think it had been subdivisions like 1 and 2 related to one topic, 3 was something different, 4 was something different. So, yeah. Okay, operation of snowmobiles. This increases the penalty for operating a snowmobile that does not have the registration or the trail maintenance. TMA, trail maintenance assessment. There you go. TMA decal from 135 to 450 for the first offense and 500 for a second or subsequent offense. My understanding is that because of the cost of the TMA decal and the registration, the cost was close enough that folks were taking the risk and just not registering or getting the decal. And this request came from VAST.
So C and G don't.
So
So
C is the
applies
old
to a bunch
language.
of other things, and then G,
Yeah,
there are other violations that would incur the 135.
yes. And this is
We
just
just don't see them.
striking. That's right. I omitted them to shorten
Okay.
the length.
So
Yeah, they're unchanged.
135 applies to lots of other violations. The new ones just apply to that particular piece.
That's right.
In the registration.
But G used to be C.
Yeah. G used to be one of the items listed under C. Now it's getting its own line with a higher penalty.
Okay. We will have that in for multiple topics. This will be one of them. We're also gonna get a year-end kind of update on how their season went. Also some safety related pieces and this. And whatever else might come up.
Yeah, I'll put 20,000 on that too.
That one might start getting into the unconstitutional range there, yeah. I think that would. I'd have a lot harder time saying that I think that one's defensible.
See the price of these machines?
They are expensive, but we're not talking about the machine, we're talking about the registration sticker.
Oh,
Um,
I think Tim wants a flat fee for everything at 20 grand.
So
Yeah.
I'll bring in some money.
yeah, the Supreme Court case on these fees came down to when the federal government tried to seize, and the story is crazy. A guy was bringing over $200,000 in cash out of the country to pay a debt in his home country. And he didn't declare it like you're supposed to under US customs law. And so the US government moved to seize the full amount rather than just the penalty of $1,000 for not declaring it. And the Supreme Court said that seems a little excessive and denied it. So that's where we get our civil offense thing. So And they were very, very strong that it was sort of an administrative requirement where, you know, a low flat fee penalty might make sense. But anyway, I've gone off into the legal weeds. Commercial driver's licenses here. So the first commercial driver's license provision, which is section 18 on page 20, this would allow during an emergency declared by the governor for an employee of a state agency or Vermont municipality to operate a heavy commercial vehicle, so over 26,000 pounds, without being required to hold a commercial driver's license while the emergency is ongoing, if the governor's declaration specifically permits that to occur, and the individual is performing official duties or activities related to the execution of emergency governmental functions. We've cross-referenced the federal definition of what those include, because as this changes, we wouldn't want the state to get out of sync with the federal government. Sorry. And so that we added that reference, and then require that the individual have a valid operator's license in order to be eligible for this, and that emergency we're defining as a condition or event that involves significant imminent or ongoing risk to public health and safety, infrastructure, or property. This is based on similar language that's in New York State statutes that also provides a waiver of the CDL requirements for public sector employees in an emergency. There are other provisions of federal law that give the department the ability to waive, for example, the operating time requirements for a private CDL driver if they're, for example, driving relief supplies up to Vermont following flooding or a major storm or something like that.
You know, if the committee downstairs had A&R or their version of A&R, do a drive-by of this section or look at it?
I don't believe Natural Resources looked at this downstairs.
To your point,
Right,
to your point, I was thinking CDLs, but hazmat, I mean, there's some very specific things that are necessary to know what the hell you're doing when you're transporting
Yeah.
stuff. Sorry.
Put that in.
Yeah, so this waives the CDL requirement. I don't know exactly how it impacts hazmat and the extent to which there are things beyond the CDL that you may need to operate. So that's something the department may know more about, or I can look into more closely. Another thing that's worth noting is that current statute already allows waivers for members of the National Guard and fire departments to operate heavy vehicles without a CDL. So this follows along that, but the hazmat issue did not come up downstairs. And I know that's something that you know a fair amount about, so. Yeah.
Is I'm sorry, Representative Burke.
well, it just brought up something that's probably not related, but the whole issue of during Irene, when they were heavy machinery was allowed in the brooks.
Is that-
Is that what you were thinking about when you said A&R?
Well, yeah, I mean, just the whole, how that all went down.
And I mean, they really weren't supposed to. It actually wasn't a good idea
Yeah.
because we removed a lot of rocks that actually
So
needed work to remove.
the issue of whether or not you have a CDL doesn't
Yeah.
get to the issue of whether or not you're allowed to do work in a waterway.
It just.
And that was a waiver of an environmental requirement at that time to allow extraction of brook run gravel. So
Sorry, conflating. I was conflating the two. That's where my mind was going toward
Well,
that.
when you said that A&R, but I mean, I realized
So,
it was different,
yeah.
but it just brought it up and remembering that it was really a bad idea.
I think I'm not sure if you've heard from the department on their intent behind this. They spoke to a lot of what they were looking at. downstairs. So that might be worth hearing on. I don't recall any testimony on the hazardous materials question downstairs, so that's something there, but the environmental issues that occurred, or the issues with operating in waterways and so forth after Irene, that was related to a waiver of specific environmental requirements that we have in the state. And so that wouldn't be impacted by this directly. So.
The section there, 2, around line 16, on page 20. You're saying that we have this emergency, but you have to have a valid regular driver's license.
That's right.
That's saying, meaning it's not suspended for any reasons, et cetera.
Yeah, or, it's possible too that an individual who is an employee of a municipality or the state may not have an operator's license. Or may just have a learner's permit. So this is saying you have to actually have a regular driver's license. That's chapter 9. You don't need a CDL. So that's all that's saying, is that you do have to at a minimum have a regular driver's license.
Right. What's the duration of a situation like this?
I think
Emergency, the timeline, I guess you're not checking the guy's driver's license of the person or the operator, who's ever going to take it over. You already know whether they have a valid license or not. I guess it's in an emergency, or how long the emergency might last.
I think it's going to depend on the emergency to some extent. And as far as, the question is, how long does the significant, imminent, and ongoing risks of public health, safety, et cetera, continue? Because once that's passed, I think you no longer have an emergency.
Because I have a driver's license, in no way, shape, or form endorses the idea that I can jump into a 26,000-pound vehicle and operate correctly or safely or whatnot. So why have section 2 at all? Either the person assigning you to get into it and run it is going to have an idea of whether you can or can't run it, whether my license is suspended, not have it, or whatnot. Why have that section as opposed to, that doesn't, just because I can drive my wife's car doesn't mean that I can drive a 26,000-pound emergency vehicle of some sort or heavy equipment of any sort whatsoever.
I think I would let the department speak to this. So this is language that was requested by the department. I think my understanding downstairs is they felt like you should at least know how to drive, but that's my paraphrasing of the discussion downstairs, but there wasn't a lot of discussion about this particular.
I guess that's just why I'm thinking what's an emergency versus the emergency is imminent, like right then and there, saving something that's happening versus an ongoing. Now we're still in the 90-day section and I'm allowed to drive a commercial dump truck back and forth hauling gravel or fill is different than jumping in and responding at the moment of emergency. That's all. Do I have it or not have it? We're going to get their feedback on this section at some point, not right now for the whole section, but we'll have, this is on a list of testimony from the DMV and they're hearing what we're asking. So they'll certainly be prepared to comment on the hazmat and whatnot.
So are you suggesting like it's for a certain period of time, or, during Irene, as Representative Burke stated, they didn't care what they did. They just needed to get Route 4 open, amended, because it was just a giant hole in the ground for a quarter of a mile. Additionally, when it flooded again in 2023, maybe there were a couple other sections that busted through. They were just hauling, they were just hauling rock all over the place just to get roads open.
And I'm just brainstorming on the issue of what is the emergency, what's the level of it. And, I would say if Representative Casey's license is suspended, he's still got a much better chance of operating that piece of equipment than I do with my license.
I just need somebody to shift it.
I
can drive it, I just can't shift it. That
Shoulder,
happened.
shoulder surgery behind and whatnot, so.
I had a guy working for me. I needed these forms that were up the road further, and the guy who owned the forms, owned the company, says, "Hey, just hop in there and drive it." And I looked over a couple of my guys, "Does either one of you guys know how to shift?" They didn't have licenses, but they knew how to shift.
Yeah.
So I got it to the job anyways, but I didn't drive it from there. I did not know how to shift it at all. He's still like pushing the clutch, and he'd do whatever he had to do, and no grinding, and a lot worse if I was doing it.
So, okay, well, we're gonna hear what the impetus was for this and what the pieces are, and we'll go from there. I am just trying to make sure that we cover as much of the
I think if you
contingency as possible. What are we at?
if you know how to drive it and shift it, more than likely you'd have a CDL, I would think, but. I don't know. I don't know how many times it came up, and doesn't the governor was the one that lifted all the restrictions, right? All the environmental restrictions, so they get like Route 73 open, Rochester opened up. And people were blocked, that the bridge was right out.
So, yeah, during
It's
the
okay.
past emergencies, there have been executive orders directing enforcement of certain laws and so forth. It's probably a longer discussion.
Yeah, no,
Some of that, but I think as far as as far as this goes, I think the questions about what's envisioned and what the substance is here is a better question for the department.
Right.
I can't answer a lot of these questions, so. I wrote the language, but I don't know the underlying issues. So section 19. This is commercial driver's license fees. So the first line here in 8A, this is to make it consistent with the rest of the section. Every other subdivision in there has a little sentence that explains what the paragraph is talking about. So this just provides that, and it lays out the different requirements when you're applying for a CDL or a CLP, commercial learner's permit. So your application has to include, and then it lays out each item with more detail after that. So the first amendment here is just to add in the applicable fee for the driver's license being applied for. 4-year fee is 108, that's existing law. 2-year fee is 72, that's also existing law. This proposes to add a 1-year fee for a non-domiciled CDL of $40. So a non-domiciled CDL is, there are 2 types of drivers who can apply for this. The first is a foreign national who has got permission to work in the United States. So while they have that permission, they can obtain a non-domiciled CDL. The limit here to 1 year, so they can only have that CDL for as long as they have permission to work in the United States. So this would require them to renew each year to keep that moving forward. The other instance is someone whose state has had their federal authority to issue CDLs suspended by the federal government. Residents of that state, if they want to operate a commercial vehicle, have to go to another state and get a non-domiciled CDL. So that's one of the penalties for falling out of compliance with the federal CDL requirements, is you can lose your ability to issue them. I don't know of any states that currently have their ability suspended. I do know that with some of there have been questions about non-domiciled CDLs being issued in certain states to individuals who may not have permission to work in the United States. That's currently valid. And so what I can say is that there are states where the federal government is looking at the possibility of suspending the right to issue CDLs, depending on them addressing that. But this,
California. Yeah.
Representative McCoy?
So the 1 year fee for a non-domiciled commercial driver's license. Are we thinking they have a CDL from wherever they're coming from, or do they know how to ride a vehicle that you would need a commercial?
This doesn't change any of the requirements for them to get a CDL.
So they
in
still
this
have to
state.
get, so they would have to follow the requirements in our state in order to obtain.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, you need to follow all the other application requirements. This is just saying if you're getting a non-domiciled CDL, it's a 1 year license with a $40 fee.
okay, thank you.
All right, motorboat validation stickers. So this came, I believe, from Department of Public Safety. It came to the attention of the department that Vermont was out of compliance with the federal requirements for validation stickers. So I'm going to scroll down to that. For states that issue validation stickers, the U.S. Coast Guard wants to see them with immediately adjacent to the registration number of the motorboat. And so this would require the stickers to be placed within 6 inches preceding or following the registration number, depending on which side of the boat they're on. That way, when the Coast Guard is pulling alongside the boat, they can see the registration, they can see a validation sticker, and they don't have to go looking for the validation sticker. Questions?
Ask for this
Department of Public Safety, I believe.
and break that down. Yeah. Did they have any testimony on that downstairs? or-
They did. I believe they had someone come in from Department of Public Safety to explain the issue.
I have written
And
down
there was-
that it was to comply with federal regulations.
Yes, yeah, it's US Coast Guard regulations, I believe. And I do remember there was a handout that showed what they were looking for, what the issue was. I'm sure we can get the name of that witness off of their Senate committee's page.
I'm sure Gabby's way ahead of me.
All right. The other, let's close my window. Still open for you guys, though. That's good. The other changes in this section are just splitting things out. It was one extremely long paragraph. And then the change here on line 16 of page 23, the definition of dealer is a person engaged in the business of selling or exchanging motorboats. So I just changed it to a dealer in motorboats to shorten that up. And then the other changes are just eliminating the gendered references, correcting cross references. So it's just technical changes throughout. And that brings us to page 26, personal flotation devices.
Is there something in those on the line, and then it tells you how long it's been since some of these sections have been updated?
There is,
Some of these sections be like hasn't been touched since, 73 or whatever.
some of these sections are quite dated, and in other instances, they've been amended more recently, but only one little subdivision or subsection. One of the things that often happens when you get changes at the last minute to avoid pulling open the entire section, one of the tricks that we will often use is we'll say 23 VSA 3306 B1 is amended. And so what happens then is you clean up the language in just that one subdivision. So the statute looks like it's been updated, but there's language that might not have been touched in 30 or 40 years. And that's a lot of what we're catching. I have trouble looking at a section and seeing things and knowing I'll have to fix it later. So I tend to do the whole section if I can. The personal flotation devices section, this adds a specific provision that would provide between November 1 and the following May 1st, all individuals on most vessels while underway and on the open deck would have to wear a properly secured U.S. Coast Guard approved personal flotation device. The requirements would not apply to an individual who is on a vessel in water that is 3 feet or not more than 3 feet deep and is actively engaged in either hunting or bow fishing and has a valid hunting or fishing license. It also does not apply to inspected U.S. Coast Guard inspected commercial vessels, which I left that language in. So when you're on the ferry, when you're on the Ethan Allen or is it the Spirit of Ethan Allen? When you're on boats like that are Coast Guard inspected, you do not have to have a personal flotation device on while you're underway. They are required to carry them. But when you're on your private motorboat during cold weather or your kayak, your canoe, etc., you'd be required to wear a PFD.
What's the fine? I don't.
20,000.
20,000.
I would have to look to see what the penalty is.
I'm just curious.
Yep. See what that is.
So I also have other states limit the size of the vehicle. And this
Yes.
does not.
So that was something I noted the first time we walked through this is based on the law in other states, but it is worth noting that most other states limit it to certain types of vessels, not necessarily all vessels. And so it varies by state, but in one case it was vessels under 16 or 20 feet, something like that. So you may want to look at, if you're concerned that this is too broad, you may want to look at what other states do to get a sense of context here.
So these are during the winter months you're talking about, right?
Yep, it's during cold weather. The concern that was raised in the Senate was that because of the shock when you hit cold water, even strong swimmers can go hypothermic and drown in a relatively short period of time. So this was proposed to address that concern about cold weather shock or cold water shock.
What about if you're ice fishing?
If you're ice fishing, you won't be out on a vessel. You're out on the ice.
So I'm okay.
So you won't need to wear
Plus the ice is thin.
If I happen to drag a boat for some unknown reason out on the ice and I stand in it, at that point, I'm breaking the law.
All right. Sorry.
I think the question is the boat underway? And I'm not sure that it is.
Well, my buddy's pushing it. He's had a bunch to drink and he wants to burn off
You're
some
gonna get
energy. So he's
arrested.
pushing.
So you were arrested.
It's a good question. I don't think this is meant to capture that.
To be honest, I don't know how I don't think anybody can, who's gonna enforce it? Who wants to hop out in the boat and it's real cold to go out and see if somebody's wearing their ice? I just don't.
They're not in the boat after November 1st.
So,
Come out and check it?
They didn't have to lie. I think we had left.
so in response to the question of what's the penalty, it's $50. It's a $50 fine.
For multiple offenses
Per incident.
Yep, so it's subject to a fine of $50 per violation.
And that would be everybody that was in that vessel, each would get their own individual fine.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think the way it's worded is all individuals aboard a vessel shall wear a properly secured PFD. So I think you could argue that this applies. It's a different violation for each individual.
And this doesn't include like dinner cruises like they have in Lake
No. That's Coast Guard inspected vessels.
Oh, that's
so it's exempt.
Yeah.
Yep. Same thing with the ferries, as long as they're running.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have to have a PFD on as soon as you got out of your car or something like that.
We got Representative White, then Representative Thomason, and then Representative Rowley.
Thank you. Okay, I have a question and a comment. My question is, Damien, did you say that these dates align with federal?
These dates were proposed as part of the amendment. This is not a federal requirement. There's I think 5 or 6 states have requirements around cold water or requirements to wear a PFD in certain situations in cold weather. So it is not a federal requirement, it is state by state. As from my reading of those laws, this would give Vermont the broadest requirement.
Okay, and my question is, if you think about what Lake Champlain feels like on May 1st, I'm guessing it's pretty cold. So I'm just wondering if these dates are the right dates for bodies of water in the state of Vermont. Because I'm guessing that, even up to June 1st, it's pretty cold, and if the goal is to make sure people don't drown while out on their kayak, and I think we had an instance like that a couple of years ago, and Representative Lally could have been more in her area, where a couple was out on kayaks, were wearing PFDs and were, capsized and passed away. So I'm just questioning whether those are the right dates, given the cold water in Vermont between November and May 1st. And then my comment, and then you can respond, is we heard testimony last year from Representative Garofano about her concern with her daughter going swimming in the cold months, and how startling and slightly scary that was. And she's a strong swimmer, but had a hard time getting back to shore. And I just heard another comment, I think, from the Lieutenant Governor when he did like the polar plunge, and said, we swam out, and if we had gone any further, we were really concerned about coming back. So I'm just making a comment that this new section does not address some of these other concerns we have heard about, people choosing to swim in cold water and of not quite being prepared for how startling and perhaps tragic a situation like that can actually present itself.
So
Rowley, then
with respect to the question about the dates, obviously I can't comment on the swimming or anything like that. My understanding is that these dates are similar to the other states. There is some variation.
And did you say what states those were?
Off the top of my head, I can remember Pennsylvania is one of them. I'd have to look. I do have that somewhere.
Yeah, I'm just wondering like southern, northern.
There was a map presented, I believe, as part of the testimony from the advocate that, so Representative Garofano, I think, had a bill in the House. I think this came from Senator White in the Senate. And there was an advocate who came in to speak in favor of this, who I think presented some information on the other states. And so that I can look for it on the website and pass it along. But yeah.
just for background part on who Representative Garofano did ask about this bill, and I definitely sent her to the Senate to get it inserted, and said her chances were far better that we would leave it in than we would put it in. So she did this work. Anyway, if you're all set, and Representative Thomas is up next. But
Yeah, I just wanted to note, I mean, kind of piggybacking on Rep. White's comments, it does seem like some type of communication or outreach about this would be an important piece. And you shared a example from a couple of years ago, but a woman died this weekend on the Little Wild River kayaking. She was in her mid-30s and from Morrisville. So I think that just speaks to this is an ongoing issue. And if, creating a law is a way to create more awareness or, prevent events, I think that would be of value, but the communication element seems important too.
I think this might need a little more fine tuning, this provision. I support the idea of it, but another sort of one I'm worrying about its applicability to is the sport of ice boating, where people are racing boats on the ice. And I think, you know, wearing, this can be very competitive, wearing PFD might be just unnecessary and interfere with the enjoyment of the sport and the competitiveness of it. And then I just wanted to say that I don't understand you know, this issue in much detail, but I do know that, you know, the Coast Guard is extremely concerned about folks who are kayaking or canoeing. And honestly, you really have to be in a dry suit at this time of the year. And I say that as someone who lives literally across the road from Shelburne Bay and see people unfortunately engaging in this pretty reckless behavior all the time. And I don't think it really would matter if they're wearing PFD, that they're just, it's, you know, it's not gonna, the water's that cold. So I think this needs a little more thought about what problems we're actually trying to solve and how to maybe do that a little with more specificity.
I broke my own rules a little bit. We're more in discussion versus questions, and it's happened 2 or 3 times, so I guess I would push back a little bit to say, are we, committee members suggesting potential witnesses? That would be the next sort of steps. Questions for our ledge council. We will definitely have a comment from, well, it's not a DMV requested piece, but okay, that piece, then what witnesses we want to hear from is where we'd be next on this. And then discussion of opinion about what we will or won't change is after that. So I would say that certainly the Coast Guard name came up, and sportsmen, fishermen have a pretty significant concern around this. I think you had your hand up, right? Representative Casey, you're up.
One last question. If I'm out ice fishing in my truck, did anybody talk about that?
On the ice.
Yeah. I haven't done it in a while, but I mean, sometimes
There,
it's a lot of ice.
so a truck is not a vessel. So that's motor vehicle. It's not the same thing. With respect to the states, according to the witness the Senate heard from, the states that have a seasonal mandatory cold weather life jacket use for certain small vessels are Maine, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Maryland. So,
Or if it's like one of those trucks
Northeast.
that can do both, drive and, you know.
like a duck boat.
Yeah, like a duck boat.
That's a great question.
Awesome.
Trying to help you out
Yeah,
here.
thanks.
So
One of those little trucks, bikini.
I don't think they're water worthy.
Representative Lally, what did you say, which sport is competing in the winter? I missed that.
It's ice boating, I think is what it's called.
Like a sail.
Yeah, so they
with runners underneath and stuff.
bring them up, and it's pretty popular in Mallets Bay and sometimes in Shelburne Bay. It's very organized in Mallets Bay. And, you know, it's actually, I think, draws tourists, and they have a whole sort of regatta up there. So, you know,
Coast Guard didn't testify in this.
I don't believe so. So the list of witnesses that I have from the Senate side are Alan Johnson, Jess Lucas. Jess Lucas was from the YMCA. Alan Johnson was from the Department of Public Safety, State Police Marine Division. And then I also see testimony from the Department of Health, Sarah Gregorek, and then Jessica Brody, who is the executive director of the Vermont Recreation and Parks Association. They also heard from the Vermont Traditions Coalition. That's where the exemption for hunting and fishing came from.
Okay. Are there other questions on the section for our ledge council? Other clarifying or pieces? Because I think we're pretty clear, we're gonna want to hear some more witness testimony on that. And I believe with our agenda, we are now on a break from now until 3 o'clock to confirm the Senator Westman is going to be able to join us at 3. And so we are